Welcome back to MMA Al Dente. Nassourdine Imavov versus Chris Curtis. This is a damn good fight. Chris Curtis is 35 years old, 30-10 as a pro, making this his 41st fight, in case you can't do math. And he's giving up 5 inches of height and 0 inches of reach to Nassourdine Imavov, even reach, with a 5-inch height differential. Nassourdine Imavov is 31, I believe. I don't know. And he's got a record of 12-4. Much more experience for Chris Curtis, a lot of valuable experience. But Imavov still 16 fights already. He's been in the UFC for some time, and he gained some valuable experience in his last fight against Sean Strickland, 5-rounder, and he lost a 5-rounder pretty clearly. But he had his best round, in my opinion, in round 5, or round 2, really. But either way, for a guy that I had cardio doubts about, and still kind of do, to be honest, it was a good look for him, having one of his better rounds of round 5. I do have cardio doubts about him because of mainly that Buckley fight, that Joaquin Buckley fight. He was, really up against it in round 3. Buckley was just pouring it on him. Buckley knew he was down, I believe, and didn't fear his power. And Buckley really started pouring it on and hurt him and didn't really come close to finishing him. But it wasn't a great look. He was clearly fighting to survive. As was Phil Hawes when he fought Phil Hawes. It was the exact opposite of that fight, where Phil Hawes was smothering Nassourdine Imavov and, really taking away his striking and bullying him in the inside with wrestling. And then in round 3, it was him cracking Phil Hawes. And he had a lot of success against Hawes, but not enough to make it a draw. So it is what it is. And, he's gotten some decision win over Jordan Williams, TKO win over Ian Heinisch, TKO win over Edmund Shabazian in round 2. There's not too many reasons to doubt his cardio, but moving forward, it's definitely something I'll be thinking about. I think Sean Strickland, he's a volume striker, one of the best volume strikers and one of the best point fighters in the UFC. But he's not a guy that typically breaks guys down the stretch. Chris Curtis, I don't even know if I'd say Chris Curtis breaks guys down the stretch. He catches them down the stretch. It's more a matter of timing, and still power is very much a deciding factor in the majority of Chris Curtis's finishes. But they do happen most of the time deeper into the fight. He's a guy that figures his opponent out. He's making reads, if I could sound like Dominic Cruz, making reads. And here, I expect a more aggressive version of Curtis. No, I can't say aggressive. I know a tiger doesn't change his stripes, but he's got to be aware that he's losing, he's letting his low output be the deciding factor in a lot of these closer fights and headbutts. That was a reference to his Kelvin Gastelum fight, his last fight, which Kelvin won that fight, but he had Chris Curtis hurt badly, and it was with a headbutt. So, it is what it is, but here, Chris Curtis, he seemed really hungry to take this fight. That Kelvin Gastelum fight was less than 2 months ago, and here he is back in the swing of things. I hope he wasn't compromised, with a concussion or whatever. Kind of like Jared Gordon. Did they fight on the same? No, they didn't fight on the same fucking night, I think. I don't even remember. But either way, Jared Gordon got right back into it and then was pulled. The athletic commission pulled him because they realized he had a concussion. He wasn't healthy. Chris Curtis was fucked up from that, but I don't think he had a concussion, and he wasn't knocked unconscious. So here he is, assuming he's not compromised. I'd say Nassourdine Imavov, if he wins, it's got to be a decision. That's the only way Chris Curtis has really lost in the last however many years, 10 years aside from the Ray Cooper fight. And Nassourdine Imavov doesn't have the firepower of Ray Cooper. He's got good striking, but he doesn't, he's not Mr. Firepower. And on the ground, he's a force too, but he's not going to get Chris Curtis to the ground, I don't think. Chris Curtis is a really sound defensive wrestler. The Rodolfo Vieira fight was the best example of that. But he's really good, a really good sprawl and brawler, if that's not a fucking derogatory term or whatever. But, whatever. No shame in being a brawler. And Chris Curtis, he's got the power where most of the time he's going to win the brawl. And I think here he'd be best served by making this a brawl. He's got to look to that Buckley third round and say, yeah, I could put this guy on his heels and work him and, make him sloppy and catch him. Because I feel like if he waits for that perfect shot, Chris Curtis, as you probably know where I'm going with this, there might be a chance that perfect shot never comes. And then he just loses a decision. And you know what? If he does, we might get a Chris Curtis hissy fit, which I'm really looking forward to. Even though I'd rather see Chris Curtis win, to be honest. But that's the thing. If he loses, you get a hissy fit most of the time. Jack Hermanson, fucking Bilal Muhammad, way back in the day, beat him. Largely out-grappled him and out-wrestled him, and he threw a fit at the end. Even I made a video about Chris Curtis being hesitant to throw low volume in round 1 against Joaquin Buckley. And then he ended up getting the finish. And the video was largely praising his performance. I bet on him and everything. And he commented on my video. Like, hey, man, I knew what I was doing, blah, 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 blah. It's just the guy doesn't take criticism well. Neither do I. Whatever. But still, I like that about him. It's endearing and whatever. But, man, whatever. Sometimes a hissy fit afterwards could be a little off-putting, But whatever. At least I don't have to throw hissy fits. If anybody gives me shit in one of these videos, I should make another video. What the fuck did you say? You try making a video. I want to see your predictions. Instead, I'll just write back, like, hey, fuck off or whatever. But I like that Chris Curtis is a petulant child. And it makes me root for him, As for who's going to win this fight, I'm picking Nassourdine Imavov by decision. I think Chris Curtis will have low output. I think that'll be the deciding factor. And I'm picking him not to get the knockout blow. But Nassourdine Imavov, his decision line is plus 140. I do envision it being a close fight. I think there's a little value on Chris Curtis, to be honest. Chris Curtis could get the knockout, of course. He's got that knockout power. But Nassourdine Imavov's never been knocked out. And I think Curtis, his counter-striking, if he's firing on all cylinders, he's very much in the point fight. So there might be a little value on Chris Curtis by decision at plus 250. But still, my pick is Nassourdine Imavov by decision. I think he will out-hustle him in one way or another, really on the feet. And I've thrown a little bit on it at plus 140. And that's not something I love to do when the lines are so tight like that. But again, I can isolate it as his primary path to victory against a guy like Chris Curtis. So, like, share, subscribe, all that horseshit. Check out my other videos.